I wanted to start off with introducing myself. My name is Brett Settles. I am the Virtual Design and Construction Technical Director here at Revizto. My main job is to work with clients to make sure that implementations go over effectively, as well as I work with the developers on charting new paths for our software. And what the webinar today is about is tips for implementing Revizto. And what this webinar is going to touch on are some of the hot topics that I encounter when implementing with different parties. As we go through the webinar, if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat box. I actually have a colleague on the line with me, Mark Zazeski, who is our Director of Sales in the Western portion of North America. And he's going to be helping me a lot today as I helped him in his webinar last week. So any questions you have, go ahead and type them in. If we can't answer them during the session, we will get to them at the end of the session. And this session is being recorded, and it will be sent out to everyone. Once we process the results, we'll automatically send that email out. So let's go ahead and start talking about the implementation procedure, as well as kind of understanding what Revizto is. So many of you probably already know what Revizto is, considering that you're in the implementation webinar. Now, one of the things is that we definitely want to address is how Revizto can help your team. So what Revizto is Revizto is a real-time collaboration software based around issue tracking and collaborating on your BIM information. One of the things that we're looking to do with Revizto is change the way we look at the design review process. And we try to preserve all the information that goes into the BIM process, as well as all the functionality that comes from utilizing 2D sheets and PDFs and 3D walkthroughs in the design review phase. And it creates a much more streamlined and centralized location for project data, as well as tracking issues, reporting on the progress of different teams or different portions of the project. So we're looking to take a process that is heavily disjointed in the industry and really hone it in and make it transparent from trade to trade and eliminate a lot of these time gate issues that happen in the construction industry and make it to where everything is transparent and decisions can be made quickly during this process to basically save you time and money while doing it. So one of the things that we want to look at is the traditional workflow in a project from conception to completion. One of the things in our industry is that there are many trades involved. Lots of different people partake in these projects. You know, there are mechanical facets to every building. There are architectural, structural, plumbing, electrical. There are lots of different aspects that go into building a facility of any type inside our current environment. So what you see in this workflow is kind of the traditional approach. Now, what happens is a project starts off in a conceptual design phase from an owner to an architect in a lot of industries. Now, in some industries, this is different. However, what you're looking at is a very boilerplate type workflow to illustrate how Revizto will fit in. And as you can see, as we go through the selections of methods and project execution plans, what happens is once all that is set in stone, a lot of these different disciplines break away into what I would like to refer to as information silos. And what they tend to do is they work amongst themselves to achieve their particular goal or their particular part of the project. And while there is information going back and forth from the architects to the structural engineers and the MEP designers to the structural engineers and back and forth, a lot of the decisions being made and the day-to-day activities are actually being held within those organizations themselves. And the other organizations that are involved in the project don't know about these types of things until a new set of drawings is released to them or they outright ask for that information. What this can do is this can create delayed reactions from one trade to another as to how they're going to solve any particular problem. And what Revizto aims to do is to break down the walls of these silos and make it to where everyone's work is transparent in the process and people can make informed decisions on a day-to-day basis without having to wait for information, and not only make those decisions, but distribute those decisions to the team and assign any issues that need to be tackled to anyone on that team. So as we go forward, we start to look at what the Revizto project or what the Revizto software can do for that project workflow. And as you'll see from the Revizto project, not a lot changes in the way the project is actually executed. However, after design and we start to populate this centralized environment with all of these design models, and the design review and coordination takes place in a centralized environment, that's where you'll see all the efficiencies of the communication that Revizto provides. And that is where you can see things like the architectural team working with the structural team on a day-to-day basis, or the MEP team working with the structural team on a day-to-day basis in real time. And this way, what happens a lot of the times is people will find out that, oh, well, these coordination meetings that were taking 2.5 hours and that we could only get to every 2.5 weeks start to become less and less of a task when you do have them. And in some cases, we've actually seen coordination meetings completely eliminated. So another thing you'll notice about this diagram is that there are two what I would call added graphics to this diagram from what the original documentation shows. And the reason we do this is because when this documentation was created, since then, we've had a lot of success in taking Revizto all the way through the site prep and construction phases, as you can see below, where that expanded graphic is. And up top, we've also seen the owner involved all the way through the end of the process. So in future documentation, what you can expect to see is that Revizto expands even further into the project and the capabilities that it actually has within the project. Everything inside of this Revizto graphic here is happening in a centralized, real-time, cloud-based environment. So I think a lot of what I've discussed here is things that you guys already know. So let's go ahead and dive into some more of the specific things to look at when talking about a Revizto implementation. First of all, we have a lot of different applications for Revizto. We have Revizto working in multifaceted environments with 4 or 5 different companies organizing together to complete a project. And we also have internal companies that are using Revizto internally for their issue tracking and collaboration tool. Now, the thing that you have to remember about Revizto is that not only will it change the way the project works with yourself and outside consultants, but it will also change the way that you work internally. And we see this as a change for the better. One of the reasons I bring this up is because even though we're relaying the same information, as you can see from the diagram on the left, there are lots of different file formats involved and lots of individual exchanges of information that happen between 2 specific people that, if you're not careful about, those exchanges of information can be held within those 2 people and no one else ever knows about it. Not only this, but this introduces a lot of opportunity for missed emails, missed reports, you know, things like that, using old versions of drawings, using old versions of reports, by tracking through old emails and IMs and all these different various forms of communication that really disjoint the whole process. Now, as you can see from the right, all of this information exchange that you're seeing on the left will actually take place inside of Revizto. So what's happening is you see this very tight circular cyclical process that really enables the whole team to see what's going on at the same time, but also allows a direct communication from the project manager to the design team, not only for things found in 2D design review, but things found in VR walkthroughs, 3D walkthroughs, as well as any sort of clashes that are being imported from Navisworks. So not only are you bringing the whole design review thing process to a centralized environment, but you're also including all of the clash reporting and all the clash data, which was usually handled separately. So once again, centralizing that environment, getting that information out to the teams, and also putting that into a format that's easy to use, not only for technical BIM people, but for industry people who are not so technically savvy, but have a lot of valuable input to the project and need to get their hands on this BIM information. One of the things that we talk about during implementation a lot is the way that the data flows through. We have our, project workflows, we have our internal workflows, but also one of the things that we want to discuss is how the actual file transfers happen in a Revizto environment. This is very important too when you're talking about project execution planning or carrying out Revizto in a BIM standards type environment. So we have various different ways of doing this, but we have plugins directly to your AutoCAD-based tools, your Revit-based tools, and your Navisworks-based tools. And any third-party softwares that sit on top of that, we have a direct link into Revizto from that. So this will play a lot of hand in hand with your project workflow and your internal workflow as to which file formats to bring in. But essentially, we can work directly with the AEC suite of Autodesk, as well as any third-party softwares that are tacked on top of that. And we also support the BIM collaboration format, DWFX, FBX, which in a future webinar, I'd like to touch on why this file type is important, as well as IFC and PDF. And these can be brought in as individual files themselves with no direct link to an authoring tool. However, in a lot of the workflows that we promote internally, and whenever you happen to work with me directly on any implementation planning you have, you'll see that I really promote going directly from the formats that provide you the most automated information inside of your software. So one thing to keep in mind is that we can bring 3D information from all these different softwares. There's a lot of flexibility here, and a lot of that will depend on how we decide what's best for your company. But as you can see, we move everything from the coordination tools to Revizto. There is a local cache held on your local PC. This is for performance issues. And then we share that out to the cloud and distribute that to everyone inside of your project. The local cache is also very good for if you're heading out to remote sites, using an iPad, collecting issues out there. You can actually do that offline and then upload all those issues to the cloud whenever you get back from the office. So I think this diagram does a good job of showing the overall aspect of how data flows. However, I just want everyone to be wary that the specifics of this can change greatly depending on what's best for your company. So let's talk about some implementation approaches here. These go back to the workflows that I was discussing. And a lot of these really come down to, what type of company are you? What are your plans? What type of situation do you find yourself in with the project and the people who are collaborating with you? First, we have an organizational approach. This approach is mostly followed up by multidiscipline engineering firms that are using Revizto as an internal department-to-department communication tool, as well as BIM collaboration tool on internal projects. A lot of the times what you'll see with this approach is that these companies tend to take Revizto and work it into their BIM standards. They disperse information to the end users. They come up with plans that basically append to their BIM standards. and working into their overall BIM implementation planning internally. Then we have what we would like to refer to as a project implementation. This is a lot more common among our general contractor clients, simply because general contractors are faced with a lot different situation as far as communication goes with the people that they work with. Internally, these are people that are often separated only by cubicles. When you start to bring in different types of trades and different companies and owners and consultants and managers, what really happens is it really needs to be handled on a project-to-project approach, simply because you're not going to have the same players in this project as you have in this project. So there's different ways to approach it depending on your situation. You know, what type of company you are, what type of project you're involved in. Is it design build? Is it design assist? Is it a standard engineering contract? All these play a role into the way Revizto is implemented. And that brings me to my third point here, which is the hybrid implementations. And this is a very loose term that I'm using here. And I would say that 90% of everyone we talk to falls into this type of hybrid implementation. A lot of projects are moving towards a design build and a design assist environment. And what this does is this not only introduces companies' organizational implementations into the equation, but it also introduces the aspects of what the project demands and how the general contractor wants to see everything in the project, or how, you know, a certain trade is being included. And a lot of times you'll see a handoff happen from the design portion to the GC portion where, you know, a lot of things in the model change, and all of this is planned beforehand. So while Revizto is extremely easy to use from an end user standpoint, I think there's a lot of very important things to consider when you're talking about implementing Revizto effectively. And a lot of this will fall to the technological leaders of each individual company: BIM managers, VDC managers, BIM directors, VDC directors. And a lot of the information in our implementation guide, which I will link everyone to at the end of this webinar, contains information around what they need to visualize where Revizto should be placed inside their organization, and some of the other topics that we'll talk about as we get through this presentation here. So as we dive down into some more specific areas of implementing Revizto, one of the most important things, I think, is the access level of everyone involved. One of the things that we talk about as a problem in a traditional Navisworks workflow or some other workflows that involve problems, especially when there's no rights attributed to each individual user, is, you know, the problem of someone, you know, that is not a BIM professional that's trying to retrieve information from, you know, a live coordination model or a live Revit model. And what they end up doing is accidentally changing information, or overwriting information, or altering information that really creates a negative effect for the designers. One of the things Revizto really looks at when talking about these types of issues is assigning access levels to each individual topic that someone can be involved in. So the example I give here is a project manager. Project managers are absolutely essential to these projects, both in the design phase as far as engineering project managers go and construction managers. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that they have access to every piece of information that they need. Along with that, though, we also don't want to give that project manager or that BIM manager the ability to change any of the information that's being delivered to him, as that is a responsibility that is part of the, you know, the engineering design team, the coordination team, as well as the BIM coordinator or BIM director goes. So as you can see in the rights given to the project manager, that we have 4 rights that are inside of this red rectangle to the left that actually disable the project manager from being able to edit, append sheets or 3D content, as these are usually controlled by the information coming out of Revit and Civil 3D and all these other tools. And we want to make sure that the Revizto project always aligns with what was released from those design teams. And we do not want to create this situation where there's confusion about, are we working on the right version? Is this model up to date? And various topics like that, that, in my opinion, have really thrown wrenches into some projects in the past for individuals out there. As you can see, he also doesn't have the ability to delete issues or manage the project rights and invite people. Usually we reserve this for the super admin or the VDC director or a dual purpose role like that. And the reason why we do this is because we want the rights to be administered from that implementation standpoint. And the reason we don't allow anyone working on the projects to delete issues is because we want them to close them. We want issues that happen throughout the projects to be indefinitely recorded, so that if something was closed a year and a half ago and you're working on a 4-year-long project, well, if an issue arises from something that was closed 2 years ago, if it's gone from the project, you don't have access to it. As to where, if it's still in the project, you can go back, you can revive that information from the dead and interject it directly back into your project if it was an issue that happened early in the design phase but is rearing its head in construction. We can go back, we can revive that issue, we can ask the important questions, and we can collaborate in that real-time environment how to solve that issue. So it's very important to go through. We can customize these roles, we can do as many of them as we want, but it's up to you as a company and how you're going to operate as to how many roles do we need, who are the people that receive these roles, what type of rights do we want each individual role to have. As we all know, working in the construction and BIM environment, that not only are there not standard positions from company to company, but different people with the same titles do different things for companies day in and day out. And it's just the kind of fluid nature of the way the BIM professional landscape is. So we want to make sure that you as a client have the ability to mold these access levels into something that works for you and is not something that is set in stone as you move forward with your implementation. The other thing that I really promote when I'm talking about implementation with clients is standardized tags. Tags are a very flexible component to our system. And this is what enables you to go through your 2D sheets, go through your issues, and tag those with specific things like what area do they belong in? What detail do they relate to? What meeting did we talk about this issue in? What discipline or system does this issue or 2D sheet belong to? As well as, different types of elements, or really anything that you can think of that you would like to categorize a 2D sheet or an issue to. This plays a huge role in your ability to effectively filter inside of the software. Whenever you're in the software, if you're part of the mechanical MEP team, what's going to happen is that you're not going to want to see all the issues that relate to the architectural team. You're not going to want to see all the issues that relate to the guys laying cable tray. All you care about at that point in time are your issues. And that's where tags come into play. If you're that trade partner that wants to filter this project by your issues, as long as those issues are tagged by your company name or your trade name, as those are involved in the project, you can filter those tags immediately inside the issue tracker and see, what's important to you. So the idea behind that is is that you can do multi-levels of tags. So let's say that you're working on a very large project that there are 3 MEP contractors working on, not just one. Well, how would you do that? Well, it's very simple with the tag-based system. All the issues among the 3 MEP contractors would be tagged as an MEP issue. However, each individual issue would also be tagged with the corresponding company. And when you go back to the reporting system, or you go back to filtering in the issues on a day-to-day operations basis, you're going to be able to create reports not only based on the overall MEP health of your project, but also how is each contractor doing individually? Are they hitting their milestones? Are they facing issues? And are they keeping up with the issues that we're feeding them through the system? The same with 2D sheets. If I'm working in 2D sheets and doing a 2D sheet design review, but I'm the architectural design review team, I don't really care about all the other sheets. And that's why if all those sheets are tagged properly, we can filter via those sheets, we can find those sheets, and we can work directly in the environment that is important to us. However, we are still feeding our information into the overall project. And even though we're working in our own environment for the time being, everyone else in the project is seeing our information. They're able to react to it. They're able to reach out to us and contact us immediately about any concerns they have. And as you can see, what we're doing is creating the flexibility for you to hone in on what part of the project you are involved in, but we're also promoting this very collaborative, cloud-based, real-time environment that should break down a lot of these time-gated information variables that you guys will have throughout the project. So what's the status? One of the questions that we get asked a lot during implementation is how do you, how do you promote using the statuses inside of Revizto? As of right now, this is a very straightforward view, in my opinion. We have had a few people say why they wouldn't do this, but in my mind, it's very simple. And I'll run through these with you guys real quick. Whenever you're applying status to an issue inside of Revizto and you're relaying that to anyone on the team in any environment, the person who creates the issue should definitely assign that issue out to whatever recipient that they want, but they leave the issue as open. The reason they do that is because once they generate the issue is open and it's logged into the system as open. There's no reason to change the status. Once the recipient acknowledges that they have seen the issue, that's when the recipient will change the status to in progress. This sets off a notification to not only the person who created the issue, but any of the other watchers involved. And watchers are people who are notified of the issues as well, even if they're not the author or the recipient. So this very, very specifically marks the date and time as to when the recipient actually acknowledged the problem. So you can really keep track of, well, he acknowledged it 3 days ago but hasn't commented on it, or as I can see, I actually input it 3 days ago and he hasn't changed the status to in progress, so maybe I'll reach out to him and make sure that he has actually seen the issue. So that really sets forth an automated way to relay if people have seen the issue or not. Once the designer or engineer or whoever is fixing the problems, once they get it in progress, the author can say, okay, he's got it, I know he's got it, we're going to move forward with other things. Whenever that designer or engineer or whoever is involved in solving it believes that it's solved, he can change the status to solved. That sets off another notification to the person who authored the issue. He can then review and he can make one of two choices. Is this solved to my satisfaction? If yes, he can change the issue to closed. That issue will then be basically placed in the closed issue filter, will still remain in the project, but will actually be removed from the issue seen in day-to-day operations. Or he can say, this issue is not solved to my satisfaction. I'm going to move it back to in progress, and that lets everyone know that's involved in the issue that the problem was not solved to the reviewer's satisfaction and it needs to be looked at further. And a lot of the times, not only will that in progress get changed back to, but the chat dialogue inside of the Revizto issue tracker will also become active with all the reasons why it was changed back to in progress. And once again, that all happens in real time. So, defining priority. This is another big topic that we talk about inside of Revizto. The reason why this is very important to me and the way that I explain this, and it's important to all of our clients, is this. When you're reporting on issues and when you're tracking issues inside of the reporting tools inside of Revizto, if there has been no definition assigned to each one of these priority types, you're going to see one of two things. Everything's going to be critical or everything is going to have no priority at all. A lot of this boils down to the fact that end users don't understand how big of a problem their actual issue is unless they are very, very in tune with the financial or schedule aspects of the project. So when a project kicks off, I think it's very important in your project execution plan or your organizational implementation plan that you sit down and define what each one of these means. Now, that is up to your organization and is very flexible. And obviously, the priorities of an issue on a $500 million project are going to be much different than the priorities on a $25,000 project. And we want you to take that into consideration. So, depending on what project you're working on, and let me point out, by the way, that even in an organizational BIM implementation setting where you're working internally on coordination, you will still need to define this priority on every project, because I can guarantee you that each one of your projects, even though that you're working internally, are going to have different dollar amounts, different schedule deadlines, and different things that are going to change the way you're prioritizing issues. So it's very important to sit down and define during a project, what does a critical issue mean? Well, it may mean a 5-day delay in schedule or a $50,000 price tag, or some other aspects. What does major mean? Maybe anything under $30,000 with, a 3-day delay. And all of that is open to interpretation, but it's important not only for your end users to understand and relay critical information to other teams, and actually have some weight behind that priority, but when you're reporting as well. Blocker is one of the items inside this list that really has its own definition, and that means, does this issue grind the project to a complete halt? But when you're reporting on these issues, you're going to be able to report by priority. And you want those priorities whenever you're reporting, this ABC MEP company, and I know I'm picking on the MEP industry. Sorry about that, guys. But, if we report on a specific company, I want to be able to say, how many critical issues do they have? How many major issues do they have? And know that each one of these issues that I see in this pie graph or this bar chart represents something that I know what it correlates to. I know that this is a big issue and could potentially cause big delays. So maybe I reach out to them and say, hey guys, I noticed you have 2 critical issues. Obviously, by the definition that we've put into place, these could cause major problems. Let's get all hands on deck and get these solved. If the people don't know what those critical priorities mean, there's no way to effectively prioritize, and they essentially mean nothing in the long term. And we think they're super valuable, but if not thought about beforehand, could create some issues. So let's go ahead and move on here. Let's talk about the Revizto workspace a little bit here. So in the Revizto workspace, this is where a lot of your cloud-based activity that is not based around the BIM model is going to happen. So in here, we have the ability to see the activity of your users. We have the ability to assign tags to users so that you can report on user-based activity. We have the ability to export all this reporting about projects and users to Excel formats, to various formats. The ability to manage your projects is here. Not only that, but this is where the reporting is going to take place. And the reporting is very, very critical to your project, as it's going to feed back that real-time information that you're going to use to manage your workforce, basically spread the workload out evenly and make everyone on your team most effective. So in our reporting tool down here, on the bottom image you can see on the left, that's where we can see each user listed out name by name, how many open issues they have, how many closed issues they have, how many issues that they have that are in progress, as well as the major and critical issues in a pie chart to the right here. That's all in real time, and the Revizto workspace is the online hub where that happens. Whenever you access your reporting tool from inside the Revizto application, the Revizto workspace is actually what will be opened on your screen. And so while this is a great place for your super admin or your VDC manager to manage license usage, invite people to new projects, more importantly, remove old people from projects, one of the things you have to keep in mind with Revizto licensing is it is based on a cloud invite basis. So if you're working on a Revizto project from beginning to end, well, maybe those guys that were involved in the design process no longer need access. And in that case, you can actually remove people who are involved in the very conceptual or early design phases, remove those people from projects, and actually hand their license over to the construction professionals who are now working with the project in the field. That all is done from here. License management, project reporting, and all of those aspects. And one thing that I want to specify about reporting is I do think it's very important from an implementation standpoint. However, it deserves its own webinar. So for the people who are very interested in the reporting tool, my plan is to put together a webinar that technically revolves around the reporting tool. So unlike today, where it was most PowerPoint and conversational based with everyone in the room, I have 2 more webinars planned that are going to be very technical based, and you will actually see these functions in operation. And that is the Navisworks class-based workflow, as well as reporting. So we're going to be organizing those, and I want everyone that's interested in those to be on the lookout for those webinars. They will be coming out, and they will be, and I hate to joke on myself here, they will be much more exciting than today. So I just wanted to definitely touch on that. So here's one of our main points around implementation. We want implementation to be as smooth as possible for you guys. One of the reasons that I was brought on last year was to assist our customers in the implementation process and not only relay the needs that I see for the industry back to the development team, but also to relay your needs back to the development team. So one of the ways that I do this is whenever we bring on a new client that is interested in implementing Revizto, is that I will essentially offer consulting services to this team during their proof of concept phase. We will have meetings about your existing workflow. How can we implement Revizto without changing your workflow so drastically, but so that you get all of the benefits that Revizto has to offer? How do we create documentation that relays to the teams how we want to use Revizto and how their day-to-day operations are going to change? All of these problems with visualizing where Revizto fits inside of your company, as well as how to effectively roll it out to your teams for actual use, This is something that I like to get very personal with our clients about, and it's something that I have been involved in with most of our clients since the day I began here at Revizto. Me personally, I have a background in implementing technology both on the design and construction side of the industry. I've been doing it for pretty much my entire career, and it's something that I want to make sure that when you roll out Revizto, it's as frustration free as possible. So when you do come on as a client, the chances of you talking to me and sitting down with me for multiple meetings is very, very high. So I want to make sure that this is not something that we're going to say, hey, read this document and then implement it yourselves. That is not the way that we want to do it. That is not our approach. And I want to let you guys know that if you're serious about implementing Revizto, that I'm definitely here to help. So what I'd like to do now is I would definitely like to open it up to any questions. I do have the software open. It is available. We'll try to tackle as many questions as we have. And so we got about the next 15 minutes to do that. Also, if you're wanting to stick around past time, I'm actually open for about a half hour extra. I know that Mark probably has something to do, but I'd be willing to stick around a little bit extra as well to make sure that all the questions are answered. So, Mark, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Brett, and hey, everybody. It looks like we got a few questions. The one I'll probably start with, this is a pretty commonly asked question from Paul Cleric. Thanks, Paul. Is there a way to create rules from an entire company, project managers as an example, and assign a certain permission set of roles so anyone in our license group can invite a project manager to that project?
Okay, so as far as that question goes, basically the way that'll be handled is that if we go into the workspace here and we log in, what you're going to see is a project-to-project basis. And one of the confusions we have is that on the manage license of the users, you actually have roles here as well. But what these roles refer to is their control over the license itself. If we go into the project, and let's say that I go into the project that I have right here, and we access this, you're going to see all the different users and their access levels. Whenever we go in here, we can assign them an access level from here as well. One of the things, though, is that right now there is no way, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no way to basically set a template for each individual project, correct?
So, Brett, I think he was referring to, so for example, go back to the project settings, because those are going to be global settings. So go into the actual project on the Revizto web browser, the Revizto application.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
So there's actually a really simple way to do this. So Brett was showing from like a global perspective within the license management, but on the actual project, we can set those directly from here. So in your example, you have Paul's example, he was asking for project managers. So project managers, what we do is we come into that manage access level, as you can see on Brett's machine. If we go into share on the top left and then manage access.
Can you guys see my screen okay?
We can.
Okay.
So you can see that by default, it comes in as view and collaborate, or administrator. So if Brett comes in and he changes, go to manage access, Brett. Change view and collaborate to project manager in this example. So you can type in any name specifically. Just add that name for the.
Yeah, definitely. So if you want to create a new role, and sorry, Mark, for talking over you, you can basically type that in very easily, and then basically click everything that role will need. So let's say that we go here, we get all this. This is what we want. We can actually save this as a new level. So now, whenever I access my different levels, you can see the project manager is actually there. So we can populate each individual project with all of these different access levels.
And by default, when you export your next project, project manager will be an option there. So you can obviously customize that specifically for that project's needs. Obviously, some of the project managers on project A might be a little bit different than project B. So, but by default, those will come over on your next project, and it will be an option. So typically, that's limited to people with the administrator or license owner status to be able to manipulate that, because we don't want anybody in the project to be able to change rights of different roles for obvious reasons. So somebody asked, what are the primary clients using this software? That's actually a really tough one to ask. That was Dennis, and I don't know if he's still on the call or not, but basically it ranges all the way from design to design build all the way through construction. So we get that question a lot, and I think, maybe in the beginning, people, I think VDC teams happen to be, or anybody on the BIM side are big advocates of Revizto because they can see the value right off the bat. But having this information and the simplicity of Revizto in the hands of the field team is also a huge advantage that we're seeing to start to get utilized even more. Probably starting early last year, we started to see that kind of group rise up in terms of Revizto usage.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'd like to explain on that is I've worked with clients that are involved in almost every aspect of building a building. Most of our clients reside in the, engineering, architecture, and general contractors. However, we have had discussion with owners. We have had discussion with BIM consultants. We have had discussions with other people. We've even had, interest from people managing facilities. And even though that's not what it's geared towards, definitely what we're seeing is more and more interest from pretty much every aspect of the industry that involves a building that needs to be collaborated on.
So another question that came through, Brett, was does this work with Plant 3D?
It does work with Plant 3D.
Yep, because Plant 3D is AutoCAD based. So anything CAD based, SAB MEP, AutoCAD, etc. All these different softwares, Civil 3D is no different. Will work with Revizto.
Absolutely, and I can say that we actually have a client that utilizes Plant 3D, and Plant 3D works really well, actually. All that information brought in from the plant model that we would, that in Revit, I would still call it BIM information because that's exactly what it is. But all of that information on the pipes and the valves and everything that transfers through is accessible inside of Revizto. Plant 3D, as long as you can figure out your coordinates properly, works really well inside of Revizto.
What is the minimum hardware required for 3D to work properly within no delays or lag, time, RAM, video card, etc.? That's a question we get quite a bit. We do have a standard template for hardware suggestions, is what we call them, or recommendations. However, there's a fine balance point between the size of the project and the hardware that you're utilizing, plus the graphical quality that you're looking to get out of Revizto. So there's a balance point with all of that. So Brett, I think Brett has a 1080 or 1080i, so he's able to run almost most projects on full quality or the highest setting, even if they're massive. Where somebody like myself that has a lesser graphics card, might have to tune down the settings in terms of the visual graphics if I was utilizing this on a mobile device or older iPad or something like that. Within the edit button on the top left there next to project, there's actually a project optimization button here. And basically what this is doing is tuning down the graphical quality that's imported out to the cloud, and it's compressing this. So think about it almost like a zip file, and maybe a zip file is a bad example, but it's pushing this information up to the cloud on a smaller less grander scale. So all the users, clicking on Revizto and pulling it and caching it locally are downloading a much more smaller file, which still contains all of the building information model data from there. However, it's not taking the amount of detail and textures that might be included in some of the more premier models.
Yeah, definitely. And based on experience as well, one of the things is before going to the optimization tab, I would definitely just go up into the graphics portion of Revizto. And as you can see here, I pretty much have everything maxed out. I'm running, and I didn't know I was getting into software, I would have changed this, but I'm also running on a 4K monitor. And I use a 1080 Ti. Which is definitely more towards the top of the line. But we have clients that are as far back as 880s, in the 8 series of NVIDIA cards, and they're not having a huge problem either. I would say that if you can run it in Navisworks, it should actually perform slightly better in Revizto, if not a lot better. So think about that. When you start getting up into 1.5 gigs of Revit data, you might just see some dropouts. But I've worked with projects as big as 800 megs with 1,500 sheets in full graphical quality, and have not had many issues at all. This in itself, this is a rather large project. It's got about 6 links. It's about 750 megs worth of data. And as you can see, my visual quality holds pretty clear here. If you have any NVIDIA GTX release from the last 2 years, as long as it's not a very bottom of the line card, you will definitely be able to utilize Revizto. It comes down to a question of what graphical settings will you use and how big your project is. So I think Mark really hit it on the head there.
Good deal. So we're going to go over Andrew Court. He asked, what's the difference between Revizto and Navisworks? What are the big differences, and how does a workflow complements each other, and how does the Navisworks clash detection process work? So the biggest fundamental difference between Revizto is that the information lives on the XYZ coordinate. So if you think about a Google Doc, when we add information in there, we don't have to file, save as, and send the information. It's transferred in real time. The same way Slack works. When we type something in there, we don't have to save that physical file and import or send that like we would with an attachment like a PDF, or if we manipulated an Excel document, we'd have to save as and send that. Navisworks, as most of you guys know, operates the same way. You have to save the information within that local NWF and post that back to the FTP site or generate an XML report where that information now is really a standalone file. So if things change within the actual building information model, those need to be that NWF export or some of those viewpoints now become irrelevant or out of date. So Brett kind of touched on that earlier. With Revizto, when you make those changes, the information lives in the location of the XYZ coordinate, not the actual file. So we're never sending the Revizto file. The issue tracker is always updating in real time. So that's the biggest difference between Revizto and Navisworks. In terms of how it complements each other, most of the users, instead of creating viewpoints within Navisworks, will use the Revizto issue tracker to create a new issue within Navisworks. Because that information is transferring back in real time and it can refer back to anybody's NWC or NWF, it works great for Navisworks to Navisworks coordination just by the nature of how Revizto is developed. And the clash detection question you had is certainly a webinar that we're going to do for probably about a half hour long that Brett's going to run specifically on that workflow and how it ties back into reporting, because we'd be doing everybody a disservice here by going through this in just a short time here. So that's a topic for a different day. A couple other questions we got on here, Brett, is how does, okay, so let's find the one I was looking for. Can you, and I'll let you address this one, Brett, can you address non-project or non-model based issues inside of Revizto? So how would we do that on, if you want to walk through like the import process in 2D where customers will have a different document where they can track these issues and use, either photos or other things that aren't necessarily tied to a location in the model, but want to be tracked to keep everything consolidated in one place.
Definitely. One of the things is that I actually got this question the other day where a client wanted to basically bring in a vendor list of mechanical objects that they had ordered for the project, not model related, but something that they wanted to track issues in Revizto from. And that is actually something that we can definitely do. One of the things is when we go into the 2D aspect of the software, this does not have to come from CAD models or BIM information. This can be drawings that were given to you in PDF, or it can be standard 8.5 by 11, spreadsheets that were given to you in PDF or Excel or, anything like that. So if we wanted to, and I'll have to dig for a PDF to kind of show this, but I could show here, I could say, create a folder, miscellaneous documents. Once I create that, I can actually come right up here and import any PDF that I would like. So let me go out here and see if I can, let's see here real quick. Let me go into a, see if I can find a PDF. I'll just use this new user training outline here. So let's say that I import this. What it's going to do is it's going to give me the ability to import this as a PDF. It's going to give me the ability to rename it and enter a description as I import it into the project. And also, and this doesn't really apply to this document here, it gives me the ability to replace a sheet that's already in the drawing, or not in the drawing, but in the project. So if this is an updated version of the sheet, I can actually leave my issues on the sheet and actually, what I would call, pull this sheet out from under the issues and put a new one in. And then that way you can keep track of these issues as the sheet gets updated throughout the project. With PDF drawings, if you're trying to incorporate, markups that were done by hand and scanned in or anything like this option's available too to replace any sheets that you have there. But basically, once all this is done, I can say done, and you can actually see that this sheet is now available in the project. I can open this, and let's say that I wanted to track an issue based on something I find in the sheet. I could actually just come up here and, mark this here, throw a quick markup here, and say, rework this section. Once I say done, that is actually put into the issue tracker as a 2D issue. You can see that there is no 3D available, obviously because it's a 2D sheet, but here I can actually get to the 2D sheet itself, and here I can see the markup done on that. So you can do this with any type of 2D information that you have that you need to put in here to track issues on. Doesn't really matter what it is. Hopefully that answers the question.
So another question is do we have any plans for augmented reality? And the answer is yes, that's in future development plans for us. The biggest thing that we look at Revizto when evaluating new technology and how it integrates in there is there going to be an ROI? So we certainly need to see an ROI and make sure that the hardware is up to date prior to pushing something out that just becomes a shiny object and something that's going to attract a lot of attention, yet take a lot of your time for an ROI that might not be worth it. So certainly that's something we've been playing with internally and looking at how that's going to work with Revizto. But I think the integration is quite simple. Having all this data in the field and being able to come up with an iPad and point it up at the ceiling and isolate that ceiling or see the maintenance schedule behind or the installation schedule for certain aspects of the project or tie in scheduling to that is going to be very powerful. So certainly something that we have in our future roadmap and excited to when that really comes into play. Scott also asked, can you create internal issues and external issues without others seeing it? So Brett, do you want to go real quick into the issue tracker?
Absolutely. So let me clear my filter here. I'll go through here. Right now we're filtering by sheets. I'll go ahead and clear that, get all my issues back. So to answer the question, let's say that Mark and I are working on this issue. And this is an issue that we do not want everyone in the project seeing. What we can do is as you can see that Mark's the assignee, Daniel is the reporter, and if I go into the watchers, you can see that all these people are involved in this problem as well. And maybe we all work internally together, and we don't want to share this issue with outside partners or trade partners, the owners, or anything like that. What I can do is I can actually turn this issue off of public. And what happens at that point is that in order to see this issue, you have to be this person, or you have to be in the watcher list. Right now, only 8 people inside of this project can see this issue, and to everyone else, this issue does not exist. So hopefully that answers. And to further expand on that, when you're talking about reporting, if you're reporting internally, you have the option to report on all issues or to exclude private issues. So if you're sharing, different types of dashboards and reports with other users, you can actually specify to leave private issues out of those reports. So not only can you hide the issue from other users, you can also hide the issue from appearing in reporting practices as well.
Good deal. Thanks for that, Brett. So let's answer maybe one more question, then we'll wrap it up. And then anybody else, if we didn't get to your question, we'll try to address that on a one-on-one basis. I know we got a bunch on here, and probably could spend a better chunk of the day answering questions. So let's pull up one more good one here.
Yeah, and while Mark's pulling up a question, guys, I'm going to go through each and every one of these and answer them, just so you know. and we'll get back to you later on it for sure.
Can you import Excel data into here? So Brett, maybe show if you wanted to attach maybe an Excel format to the issue log, how that would look.
Definitely. So once again, very simple process. If this issue, resides around an Excel spreadsheet, what we can do is we can actually click right here, and as you can see, we can attach PDFs, text files, comma separated values, Excel Online, docs, JPEGs, all these different types of issues directly here. So if I, search for an XLS on here, maybe my PC will be a better place to do that. What I can see is maybe I want to attach this case study document. I can select that, I can open it, and I can send it, and there's the document attached right there. And if I go to my paper clips, you can see that document attached right there. So very. And go ahead, Mark. Sorry about that.
And the beauty of this now is whenever we come back to this issue at any time in the project, Brett, if you want to jump over, click on 2D on the far left. The far left of the issue tracker, while in the issue tracker.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. Let me go back here and clear this, and I'll head back to the issue tracker. Where were we on that one?
Just go to a lower issue where we have a plan.
Okay.
So if Brett goes to the 2D issue, this is what's really cool, because if he goes to the 2D aspect of, in this example, it's a clash, those different issues live on there. So he can click on any of these different issues. And the nice thing is that all that information, all the chat, all the communication, and even that Excel document that was attached to this issue log is going to be able to be pulled up and referenced, because all the information stays and is housed in there regardless of if the issue is closed out. So that's, again, another big thing of not having to search emails and going back several years at times to try to identify the root of how a decision was made.
Definitely. And one thing I'd like to point out that's more of a technical thing than that is not only can we address the issue. But one of the things that we offer that is really, really important is not only when you go to 2D, where you can see where this is, as well as 3D, but I can actually see every sheet that this issue is inside of its view range's space. So, if I'm the mechanical guy, I don't want to see it on that. I want to see it on this plan. And so there's lots of flexibility in the ability to attach Excel documents, PDFs, but not only that, but to have each issue relay to each individual sheet of the drawing and not just one that it finds and decides it's going to attach itself to that specific sheet.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.